So this week on Jabba's Court, we're talking about the future of Star Wars and is Rey essential to it? Mr. Naylor, that's been the big comment I think coming out in the last fortnight has been this suggestion that Rey is essential to the future of Star Wars, and that's Lucasfilm's kind of opinion on things. Do you agree?
I do actually. I think Daisy did an amazing job in episode 7. Um, and obviously, along with Harrison Ford, really did carry that film. I thought she did a really good job. She proved that she could act, um, if given the right script. Episodes 8 and 9, as you know, I'm not a big fan of either of those films. And they suffered not from necessarily from how Daisy portrayed the character, but the script. There were a couple of questionable moments where she came across a bit wooden, but I'm wondering whether she actually did that deliberately because she hated the script. um, but no, I think that it's very difficult for the likes of you and I to put ourselves into the shoes of the youngsters that first got to know Star Wars through the sequel trilogy. And I would imagine there's going to be a lot of kids out there, probably now in their teens, early 20s, that for them that trilogy was their trilogy, is their trilogy. We've had chats about this before, Brian. People come into Star Wars at different jumping in points these days. Some people have come in through Rebels or the Clone Wars. So it's not always the cinematic adventures that have brought them on board, but there will be a vast amount of people that came on board with The Force Awakens. Now we can ascertain that because the box office for The Force Awakens was huge. So there will be a lot of kids that came on in that trilogy. Um, I think they will be delighted that Ray is going to potentially front a new trilogy if that is indeed what happens with the Kinberg project. Um, it looks to me like it will be that because of what we were saying, um, that film that was slated for 2026 has now been removed. So I think that's giving Mr. Kinberg and crew chance to sort of get some ideas together, and hopefully, unlike the sequel trilogy, they will map out the three films rather than do just one film and then think, oh, what we're going to go, where are we going to go next with this? Hopefully, they have the opportunity to lay down a proper roadmap, a proper ending of that trilogy that they can then work up to in a logical and sensible way. Um, the prequel trilogy never had that struggle because it knew what it was leading up to. And the original trilogy does feel like a proper three-film story. There's a proper arc to it. So fingers crossed, this sequel trilogy, I don't know what we're going to call it. What are we going to call it? I mean, this goes back way back to some of the stuff that was in the original archive, saying that George Lucas's story was a 12 film story. Uh, that then got knocked back to 6 when the prequels came out. No, that's it. That's the whole story. Then we got the sequel trilogy, and now it looks like we're finally going back to that 12 film idea. I hope that's the case. I mean, as we've said, it could be that this trilogy is nothing to do with that episodic structure. I think it's more likely to be than not. Um, but yeah, what are your thoughts, Brian?
I think it's kind of a sad indictment of Lucasfilm that we've gotten to the point where one character is essential in all that we have. Um, it's bizarre that we've gotten to this situation. I probably don't disagree with them, but you're starting from a point of 50% of the fan base don't want to know. Um, and that is a terrible place to be.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's difficult because the way they ended 9 and they're calling her a Skywalker, she's not a Skywalker, she's a Palpatine. It'd be much more
Hopefully,
interesting if you
yeah,
had her fall to the dark side and continue the Palpatine line.
yeah.
Um, but I don't
I
think,
would like to. I'd like to think that she kind of drops that, or that somebody comes along and challenges it early on.
yeah, um, I hope so because I don't think as an actress she can play a dark side character.
No, no, I kind of see what you're saying there. It would be interesting because whilst it was never broached in the films, obviously we've got all sorts of different content that features Mara Jade, and Luke Skywalker's relationship with Mara. And who's to say that there's not a child lurking out there that's a Skywalker that hears about this pretender to the throne, and actually swoops in and challenges everything that's happened as a result of Episode 9. That would be the way I would tend to take it.
Yeah, I just find it unbelievable that with the whole franchise you've got in Star Wars, that their perception is that she is the one and single only character and only direction in which we can go. I just find it appalling that we're at that stage. I think it's a character that's divisive at best.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that the current group of people running Lucasfilm have really dropped the ball massively on Star Wars as a franchise, and I think it's time for them to go.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that. But I
And
think that,
so I actually
that
think what's essential for the future of Star Wars is Lucasfilm needs a clear out. And
yeah,
I think the people aren't fit to continue the franchise as it is sets, and I think they've proven that with the product that they've put out. I think they've lost so much of the existing fan base in pursuit of a fan base that's not there that they haven't found. I think the first rule of anything is you take your existing fan base with you and then you build on it, and they haven't done
yeah,
that. Um,
yeah,
and now to have a singular idea that this character who, and it's no criticism of Daisy at all, as it's character that is divisive is the only direction that they've got to go when you've got a whole untapped franchise there of storylines and characters. It's
yeah.
it's just sad.
Maybe they see it more as an opportunity of linking to new characters rather than thinking of it as totally based on Ray. I mean, I would expect to
Yeah, I
see lots.
wouldn't mind that if she was the link pin between
Yeah,
what we're something that from the existing group of films to bring us
yeah,
to a new generation of films. Don't have an
yeah.
issue with that. It's the fact that they think it's essential. So that's effectively saying that she has to be front and center focus in my eyes.
I think it's probably been phrased wrongly by the media, hasn't it? Really, I think I would be surprised if we didn't have certainly BB-8 in there. Um, it's
You're
always
winning
easy
me
to
over
do.
here.
It's always easy to do your costumed characters, so it'd be great to see Chewie again. It'd be great to see 3PO and R2. Um, who knows? I mean, I'd like to think that the wound that John Boyega looked as if he had for Star Wars seems to be healing. I'd like to see John Boyega again because I thought he was great as Finn. But again, great in Episode 7, very much diminished in 8 and 9, and therefore,
But
you
does
know,
that not tell you what the problem is in that you've ended up with just one character?
yeah, yeah.
When
Well, I mean,
you had a whole trilogy to build a whole generation of new characters for people to love,
yeah,
to move forward with a whole group of new characters, and you've ended up
yeah.
with one character.
Well, they kind of gave it that separation right at the end of 9, didn't they, as well, with Ray
Essentially,
being,
at the end of 9, they basically advertised it and promoted it as this is it, this is the end, which
yeah.
is a ridiculous thing to do when you've got a franchise.
But they did that with Jedi. Really,
Yeah, then it was what 20 plus years of
yeah,
in this in terms of movies.
yeah.
So you can understand that was the plan, but obviously they knew at 9 they weren't stopping. making films. So why
Mm.
promote it as the end? It's like
Yeah, it's
dereliction of
quite.
duty is how I see it.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether it's as solid an ending as that though. I think it was. She's returned to the Lars homestead to bury the sabers of Luke and Leia, which is almost sort of
It
ceremonial.
is
Uh,
if that's the end of the Skywalker saga, but then you got
yeah,
to call her Rey Skywalker, so you're
yeah.
not ending the saga.
Well, this is why I think it'd be really cool to bring in some offspring from Luke and Mara Jade. Whether they go down the old route, I don't know. Um, yeah, yeah, I agree, Jonathan. Yeah. So I think this will be a way to sort of not necessarily follow the exact um, blueprints that are laid out in some of the legends stuff as it's now become, but they can bring a character in. This can be like a new Skywalker lineage, which is kind of what they were hinting at by calling Rey a Skywalker. Um, my, my son found out how that film was going to end, and he said, "If this is the ending, I am going to walk out of that cinema and I will not be able to speak." The ending came up. I looked at Matthew. He looked straight ahead. He stood up and he walked out of that cinema disgusted. And Matthew at the time was in his teens, late teens. So, even as a young fan, he wasn't he saw the effect of what episode 9 actually did. Um yeah, I just think this is a real good opportunity to rescue the name of Skywalker. Um
To me, what's essential to the future of Star Wars is to completely wipe the slate clean and
yeah,
effectively start again. Let's just say we're going to start a new storyline with new characters with no connections to the past and move forward. And it's
yeah.
effectively a admission. Look, that was our storyline. Whether you like it or not, that's what it was. But you have to acknowledge the mistakes that you've made.
We've
And
had mixed
I
results.
think if you focus a new trilogy on Rey, you are not acknowledging the mistakes that you have made.
Yeah, yeah. I think she will feature. She will feature heavily. And she may only feature heavily in the first one. Who knows? But I think that for a lot of people to be on board with it, there's got to be a link.
Yeah. I just think I
Especially,
didn't have an issue when it was a single film and it
yeah,
was like, okay, so there's fans of Rey the character, they've got something to look forward to. I think if you're going to build a whole trilogy around her, it doesn't work
yeah,
for me. And I think the fact that you've struggled to come up with a single idea that you like for a single film for Rey,
yeah.
and now you're looking to make a trilogy, just makes no sense to me.
Perhaps they were really struggling to land what they wanted to
Yeah.
do with that single film.
I don't
That's
know.
what it.
Just the fact that they're turning it to Simon Kinberg as well, who's every idea that he's contributed so far has been rejected based on the fact
Yeah,
that he hasn't received a writing credit in any of the work that he's done at Lucasfilm. He got 2 thank you credits, I think.
yeah.
Um, and that doesn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't make sense. Just
He's in a bad one today, folks.
oh no, but is it the only direction they've got left to go, Lucasfilm?
No, of course not. Of course not. And I still maintain that we need to go forward rather than go back. Because whenever we try to go back, the Acolyte's a classic example. Because you've set that before the prequels, and that is canon. Then although there's a significant amount of time, about 100 years between that and the Phantom Menace, the events of the Acolyte still have some impact on the overall Star Wars story.
Yeah.
So, it's a tricky one. I would rather move forward. I would rather either do a continuation 10, 11, 12 in that same sort of time period, following on from the events of episode 9, albeit a few years later, or like you say, completely do something new. I mean, The Mandalorian has saved Star Wars in many ways. Certainly the first two seasons did anyway. Not so much about the third. Um, but how that will dovetail into things,
But
again,
that's
you know.
kind of interesting you bring the Mandalorian up, because if that movie does well,
Yeah.
is it a one and done film? Or
Not if
if
it
that movie
does,
does well, surely they're going to want to make more. But
absolutely.
it depends, obviously, what the storyline is. Maybe they kill the Mandalorian off.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, if that is a huge success, then they'd be stupid not to capitalize on it. But again, it's going to come down to the story, the story choices they make. Who knows what happens to Grogu? Um, like you've said before, Brian, it'd be nice to see like a teenage Grogu, albeit what is a teenage Grogu? 80 years old. Um, that would be quite cool to see him involved in some way in potentially 10, 11, and 12 if they go down that route.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of opportunities, ways that they can link these different properties together and come up with something that would work. Um, that could be the plot driver that Grogu somehow is involved with the Rey storyline, and somebody that was initially associated with Grogu comes along to sort of spoil the party, if you like. But it's not for us to worry about. We've just got to go along and critique it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what we're good at.
exactly.
On that point, it's the end for this week's Jabba's Court. Obviously, Jabba's Court's part of Good Morning Tatooine. It live streams every Sunday at 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York, and it's released every Wednesday on Fantatrax TV.